In a small, tight-knit town, an encounter between a white police officer and a black man turns ugly when racial slurs are thrown into the mix. The officer, with a history of prejudice, calls the man a monkey, a dehumanizing insult rooted in deep-seated racism. But what the officer doesn't know is that this man isn't just any ordinary citizen. As the tension rises, the truth unfolds in the most shocking way. The black man he's just humiliated is actually the new chief of police, ready to take charge and transform a system that has long been broken. How will the officer react when he realizes the gravity of his mistake? Will he face the consequences of his words, or will he try to save face? Stay tuned, because this story is far from over, and the consequences could change the town forever. As the officer stands there, stunned by the revelation, he tries to process what just happened. His mind races. This man, the one he just insulted, is the very person he's supposed to serve under. The new chief of police isn't just any figurehead. He's a man who has fought his whole life to overcome systemic barriers, rising through the ranks despite the odds stacked against him. His promotion is a beacon of hope for many in the community, but for some, it feels like a threat to the status quo. The officer, now visibly uncomfortable, avoids eye contact, knowing that words can't undo the harm he's just caused. The air between them is thick with unspoken tension. The chief's calm demeanor doesn't help ease the growing sense of dread. With everything on the line, his career, his reputation, and the future of the department, the officer has no idea just how deeply his actions will come to haunt him. The chief of police, standing tall yet restrained, studies the officer, his gaze sharp but measured. Inside, he's battling a whirlwind of emotions. Anger, disbelief, and a sense of betrayal churn in his chest. He had always known there were those who doubted his ability to lead. But to hear such a degrading slur come from a fellow officer, someone who took an oath to protect and serve, cuts deeper than any criticism. This isn't just about him. It's about every black person who has ever been marginalized, belittled, or silenced by a system that's supposed to protect them. The officer, now sweating under the weight of the moment, stammers an apology. But it's too late. The damage is done, and the chief knows it. What weighs heavily on him is not just the insult. It's the fact that the officer's actions are a symptom of a larger, deeply ingrained issue within the force. How many others feel the same? How many have been quietly harboring these racist beliefs, waiting for the right moment to reveal them? Meanwhile, back at the precinct, whispers are spreading like wildfire. Officers exchange looks, wondering what will happen next. Will the chief retaliate, or will he show mercy? The atmosphere is thick with uncertainty, as if the entire department is holding its breath. The chief knows that his response will set the tone for his leadership, but he also realizes that one bad decision could unravel everything he's worked for. His mind races as he considers the best course of action, torn between his personal sense of justice and the realities of holding a position that demands professionalism above all else. The chief stands there, his mind a battleground. He has to make a choice now, whether to escalate the situation or to use it as an opportunity to change the system from within. His grip tightens on his badge as a surge of emotions floods him. He could take immediate action, fire the officer on the spot, and make a statement to the entire department. But something holds him back. The officer's future, his career, hangs in the balance. The chief can't help but wonder how much of this hate has been allowed to fester under the surface, hidden by the structure of authority that's supposed to serve justice. Can one officer's failure be chalked up to an isolated incident, or is this a reflection of something much deeper within the department? The tension in the air grows palpable as the seconds drag on. The officer stands motionless, his body language revealing a mix of shame, fear and desperation. The chief studies him, considering all the consequences of what he says next. He wonders if this moment will define his leadership or if it will be forgotten once the dust settles. But deep down, he knows this is no small thing. The town, the entire department, is watching. They'll see his next move as a reflection of everything that came before. Outside, the community begins to stir. Word spreads quickly about the altercation between the two officers, and people begin to gather, sensing a storm brewing. A few protesters show up, chanting for change, for justice. Some are hopeful, others skeptical, but all of them are waiting for a signal from the chief. Will he take a stand, or will he bow to the very forces of racism that he was chosen to dismantle? The weight of history and the future of the department rest on this crucial moment, and every choice now seems like it could tip the scales in a direction that can never be undone. The chief feels the pressure, but he knows the hardest decision is yet to come. As the chief takes a deep breath, preparing to address the officer, a sudden commotion erupts at the door of the office. The precinct's captain bursts in, her face pale and tense. She's holding a file, her hands trembling as she looks from the officer to the chief. "You need to see this," she says urgently, her voice barely above a whisper. The chief's stomach tightens, and his eyes narrow. Something about her urgency doesn't sit right. The captain hands over the file, her expression filled with a mix of regret and concern. As the chief flips it open, his gaze scans the papers inside, his pulse quickening with every line. The file reveals something he never expected: an investigation, long buried, that implicates several officers in a string of racially motivated incidents. The officer who insulted him is not alone. The whole department is tainted by this poisonous undercurrent of hatred. His heart races as he realizes the gravity of the situation. This isn't just about one racist cop. It's about an entire network of officers, complicit in actions that go against everything the force stands for. The chief feels the weight of his responsibility now more than ever. If he exposes this corruption, the entire department could collapse. Lives could be ruined, and the town's fragile trust in the police force could shatter beyond repair. The stakes have just skyrocketed. This is no longer just about a single incident or an officer's career. It's about the future of the entire police department. The chief knows that whatever decision he makes now will send shockwaves through the community. The clock is ticking, and as the captain looks at him, waiting for his next move, he feels the immense pressure mounting. The chief stands frozen, the weight of the file heavy in his hands. His mind races as he processes the devastating truth before him. The officer, the department, the very system he's worked so hard to reform, all of it is compromised. His decision now is more critical than ever. The room feels suffocating, as if the walls themselves are closing in on him. He glances at the officer, whose face is drained of color, and then at the captain, who is waiting for a response, her eyes pleading for direction. Without a word, the chief stands up, his voice calm but firm. "Gather everyone." Now he orders. His tone leaves no room for hesitation. The captain nods, her face serious, as she steps out to prepare for the confrontation. The officer remains standing, eyes fixed on the floor, his earlier bravado replaced with fear. In the briefing room, the entire department gathers, unaware of the storm that's about to hit. As the chief enters, he locks eyes with each officer, his gaze unyielding. He begins to speak, his words cutting through the tension like a knife. He reveals the findings from the file, the evidence that implicates not just one officer, but a network of corruption running deep within the force. The room is silent as the magnitude of his words sinks in. Then, just as the chief begins to address the consequences, the unexpected happens. The captain steps forward, her face pale, holding up a second file. "There's more," she says quietly. The room falls into stunned silence. The chief's heart skips a beat as she opens the file, revealing that the investigation was actually a setup. Planted evidence designed to frame several officers, including the one who made the racist comment. It turns out the corruption was not what it appeared. The real mastermind behind the scheme was someone at a much higher level, someone the chief trusted, someone who had been pulling strings from the shadows all along. As the realization hits, the chief feels a cold shiver down his spine. The battle he thought he was fighting, the battle to cleanse the department, was only the beginning. He now faces an even more dangerous enemy, one that could threaten everything he's worked for.